welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker. Hola, sir.
Yeah, ¿cómo está? How's it going?
I don't know Spanish. I only know hello.
Yeah, French, right? Ça va?
D'accord. I know very little of everything. I did take French 2.5 years in high school, and in French 3, halfway through the year, I went to the teacher and said, yeah, I think I need to drop this class. And she's like, oh, but I really enjoy you being in the class, but you're right, you don't know French at all. she happily said, she signed it laughing. Like, I wish you were here because I was entertaining.
That's funny. I actually almost took ecstasy in French class one year in high school.
Sorry, you broke up there for 1 second. Did you say ecstasy in French class?
Yes, I almost took ecstasy in French class.
Oh, wow.
I would love to give the listeners just a quick little story.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
We are going to talk hockey, Atlantic Division preview, but first, Justin's going to tell us about how he almost took ecstasy in French class.
Yeah, senior year of high school, right? I had a French teacher first hour. Did not care what we did in class at all. So we basically just sat around first hour. She was like half asleep anyways. Basically, I came in one morning, raging headache. And this kid had a bottle of Aleve sitting on his desk. So I went over to just take some without asking, which was stupid of me anyways. This kid jumped over 3 desks and tackled me. Teacher rips me off thinking we're getting into a fight, right? I had no idea why this guy tackled me, right? And then basically, we basically figured, he's like, no, it's nothing. So, she just lets us go about our business. And he just leans over and whispers to me after she's all done. He's like, there's ecstasy in that bottle. I'm like, I was about to pop 2 of those bad boys. I thought it was Aleve.
Oh my gosh. You would have been the most entertaining person ever to be in French class, at least.
Yep. That would have been great. And my grandmother was a teacher there too. So that would have gone over real well.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's, with that said, I suppose that there are some teams in our preview that would be a lot more fun to watch on ecstasy. That would be, I've never done it before, but I can just imagine you'd probably be a lot more thirsty watching them. But anyways, so we're doing the Atlantic Division. And on today's show, so it's gonna be another 3-parter, right? Because we're gonna do the Leafs and the Red Wings. Those are our teams. We cheer for them. We watch them the most. So we're gonna shelve them for last and do a show with just those 2 teams. So that means we get 3 teams per for the other 2 previews that we do. And we're gonna start out with the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Montreal Canadiens, and the Buffalo Sabres. Maybe not in that order, but we're going to do those 3 teams on this episode, part 1. But before we do, just want to jump into this division as a whole. Justin, where do you rank this division compared to the other 3 divisions in the NHL?
Oh, that is a very, very good question. I think given what they have at the top and the bottom, and I guess maybe I should clarify what my expectations are for this year for this division versus what we actually saw last year, right? Because that's super important. A team like Ottawa and Detroit, maybe, you saw major improvements. Maybe you can make the argument that, Tampa and Boston maybe got a little worse. But I think, honestly, in comparison to the other divisions, I would probably put them third place, really.
Okay, third best division in hockey.
Yeah, I guess maybe because I have higher expectations for some teams in the Metro than what I do in the Atlantic, and the Central Division is kind of hard, in my opinion, to beat as long as you still have the Stanley Cup champion in your division.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, if we're going off of the top team in each, I suppose there's, I guess I would still probably say that they're top to bottom. I would think that they're at least second, but because Ottawa got better, and Ottawa and Detroit got a lot better. I think it's fair to say they went from being bottom feeders to there's an outside chance they can make the playoffs. I think in the Athletic and their predictions, or I guess it's their model of projecting out these teams. The Senators, a 33% chance to make the playoffs. So not terrible. I mean, it's not likely they'll make the playoffs, but still they went from being a team that was like a 4% up to a 33%. They improved drastically, as did the Red Wings. Maybe not Montreal, but I think we all can see Buffalo taking a little bit of a step, having Owen Power there for an entire year. Anyways, we're getting right into the whole conversation, but I do think that they're second. I don't like the Central. To me, kind of scares me. Once you get past Colorado, Minnesota, the rest of that division is kind of like there's playoff teams in there, but a lot that I don't know what to expect. The same goes with the Pacific. Outside of Calgary and Edmonton, not totally sure what to expect. And the Metro, I know what to expect. There's minimum 4 playoff teams there that could all win at least a round. And that's where I think they Atlantic can go head to head, because I think there's also 4 teams in this division that can at least win a round too. So, but we have them second and third, so pretty similar. Okay. Let's jump into the Lightning here. No, the Montreal Canadiens. Let's do the Canadiens since they played last night, since we've had the chance to watch them.
Oh, yes. That was most entertaining for me, at least the last 5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean that third period, like the last 10 minutes of the third period, definitely definitely did it for you, especially if you have no vested interest. Then it was wonderful. Not so wonderful for me. But I like that we waited here on this preview for the Montreal Canadiens, because I think if we had done this preview without seeing them play at all, as opposed to, I know it's one game, they're still going to be pretty bad, but I think that they showed us what they're going to be this year, and I think because of that one snapshot of this team, I do think that this preview will look a little bit different now that we have an idea of what they're going to probably throw at a lot of teams, with the similar attempt at trying to beat the Leafs as they do the other powerhouse teams in this division. So with Montreal, their weakness, the ultimate weakness, is their blue line, right? Are we there on the same page about their blue line?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
What was it? Last night, we're recording this on the 13th of October on a Thursday, so in the Montreal Leafs season opener, Mark Giordano has more games played than the entire Montreal defense put together. I just have to throw out that Arbor Jackeye has the greatest name I've ever seen that doesn't look like the name at all that you were saying.
Dude, I just think of the SNL skit with what's his face when he's just interviewing Brady Shane. He's like, "That's an S, that's a K, that's a J, that's a nope."
Right.
Not happening.
XHEKAJ is Jackeye.
That's just amazing.
I think I would probably just maybe go and change that last name to like the way that it sounds, and it would still be pretty cool, and a lot easier to remember. Like I kept, how do you say that guy's name again? Oh, and then they would say it again. I was waiting for them to say it. But okay, so their defense as a whole, certainly incredibly weak. The only one where we probably say, hey, there's a legitimate NHL defenseman is David Savard, right?
Yep.
And it's not to take anything away from Jordan Harris. Looks like he can be good. Caden Gooley, Arbor Jackeye is quite the story coming in, never drafted, and Chris Weidman is he's fine. Chris Weidman's fine. He's never going to be a world beater, but he's 27 points in 64 games last year. He's played for the Senators for a few years, and he's a fine defense. Like he's a sixth defenseman on even a mediocre team. He's a sixth defenseman. What I guess you have to ask the question, like, what's Montreal going to look like through 82 games, not just the one game against the Leafs where, they're like, well, this defense they look like a veteran defense. They're not making any mistakes. And what do you expect through a full 82 games?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of growing pains, right? Obviously, St. Louis is going to I think he's going to do a phenomenal job coaching this team, but expectations are low, and that's pretty much where I expect them to be. Low, right? I think this defense is going to, spend most of the year trying to figure things out, who fits better where, whose skills fit better, in this position or at this, point in the lineup. Should this guy be a number 3? Should he be a number 4? A guy like Jordan Harris, right? I don't know much about him. But, watching last night's game, I thought, they did a good job holding their own. I think they, kept the Maple Leafs they limited a lot of the chances. But for the most part, I think, eventually teams are going to start to figure these guys out, especially a lot of these younger guys, right? I mean, you look at a majority of their blue line is 20, 22, 21, 25. So they're young guys with limited experience, right? And you mentioned Giordano's got more games than all of them combined. And so I think that's going to come into play. Obviously there's some excitement and some, I guess you could say adrenaline flowing through the body.
Last night they're playing like it was a playoff game.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean.
That's what they looked like. And the Leafs definitely were not. They were playing. I don't think that there was a lack of effort in that game, but they were playing just uninspired. First game and it's their home opener. It was.
They looked to me like it was the last game of the season. They had already made the playoffs. They were in, and just okay, whatever, just go out there and just do whatever.
Right, and I mean, I give all the credit in the world to Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki together. They continue to look really good. They're just picking up where they left off last year, and it's always a crapshoot when you have a number 1 overall pick who wasn't it's not like Connor Bedard or Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid coming in. This is I think everyone thought hey, this is a project year. The number 1 overall pick, the number 2, these guys, they might make the roster, but they're not going to be leading the league in anything in their rookie season. But Uri Slafkovsky he didn't look out of place. He made a really nice play on Austin Matthews to a check from behind, but in the open ice, just to lift his stick and knock him over, so he couldn't get a good shot off. And he seemed to be where he needed to be. And I think that's sort of what everybody was talking about in the draft last year, was that he really was NHL ready, that his defensive play was there. He understood the game. And I think you saw that yesterday. You didn't really see any flashes of greatness, but you saw an NHL player.
Yeah, exactly. I think, again, you said project, right? And I think that perfectly sums it up, what really the top end of this last draft really is. Because, Slafkovsky, right? Limited minutes on that third line with Dvorak and Brendan Gallagher. And I look over in Seattle, right? They have Shane Wright, who they're playing on their 4th line at the center position. He only played 11, 12 minutes. So, again, they're sheltering these younger kids, getting them exposure, but not putting them in bad situations. Like, for example, in Chicago, you've got Max Domi and Anthony Ciu on your top line, right? Those guys are obviously not meant to be there. Same with guys like Slafkovsky. They're not McDavids. They're not Crosbys, where they can walk in, be top line guys, and take over right away, right? These guys are going to need some seasoning. They're going to need some time. And I think, again, it's funny to me. I didn't even realize it till about halfway through the game, but Jonathan Drouin was actually a scratch last night.
A healthy scratch, yeah. He was a healthy scratch.
And so, that's going to be the mystery with this forward group, right? Is who contributes night in and night out, who actually gets in the lineup. And
does anyone like Jonathan Drouin? Because at this point, it sure seems like nobody does. I mean, how is it that a player with pretty I'm sure still has talent, still has ability, but it's not as if he deserves to be handed anything on a golden platter. He has had a lot of injury problems. He's had a lot of problems. You'd think that this would be somebody who goes, I need to come into camp and be at my best, work my ass off, and make the team. And he really doesn't impress as head coach. He doesn't show up the way that anyone expects, and he's benched for some of these kids that have never played a game in the NHL. I do love that the 3 rookies were out there skating last night by themselves, and they made them all take their helmets off before they went out. That was pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, this Montreal team, the reason why they're intriguing to me is because I really do think that you can see this young energy, and maybe they're not going to be the easy out that everyone kind of assumed they would be. They have it goes a lot of new faces. You've got, I mean, we talk about the defense right now. Granted, Michael Matheson and Joel Edmondson are both out. Edmondson, I think, is going to be a good amount of time, probably at least another month. They haven't really given him a timetable at all, so that's never good. Matheson's only day-to-day, so he'll be back on the blue line probably in a week. So you do get Michael Matheson, but again, new face in Matheson. You've got new faces in Slafkovsky, Kirby Dach, Evgeny Dadonov. Like, there are, and Sean Monahan, who scored last night. So there's plenty of new faces on this team to maybe give it a little bit of more of a boost than we thought, because hey, they fit well together, and what it does to motivate other players around them could also play a factor too. So do I expect them to be a playoff team? No. Do I expect them to be last in the division? Yes. But is it going to be the kind of season like last year where they had 55 points or something like that?
Right. Yep.
It's not going to be that kind of year. This is going to be a year where they are much more enjoyable to watch, but they still lose more often than they win.
Yeah, I agree, right? There's going to be guys like Sean Monahan that are going to play with chips on their shoulder. They're going to be playing for example, he's playing for a contract, right? So I think you're going to see a lot of that this year out of a lot of their players, and it's going to make it fun to watch, right? They're going to be like the Red Wings, last year and the year before that, where they were just fun to watch. They battled, but they weren't really expecting, you didn't expect them to make the playoffs, right? But
the other tough thing, Jake Allen looks great. Jake Allen looks fantastic. But you also have Sam Montembeault as your backup. And I don't know, I don't expect that to change, because I don't think Montreal wants to make the playoffs. So I think they would be happy to at least have a shot at winning the lottery. Can they win the lottery again? I can't remember. I always forget which was that. Was last year the first year where you can't win it again?
No. Well, actually,
I think it was.
Right.
I think it was. So now, the Montreal Canadiens can't win the draft lottery again. For what is it? Or they can't get the first overall pick. Yeah, look that up. I can hear you. I hear you. They can't get the first overall pick. Is that what it is?
Let's see. Teams can.
Yeah, I forget. I'll let you read. And I'm gonna. When I look at the Montreal Canadiens, I still see. I mean, I see an exciting team because Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki can fly, and that's going to throw off a lot of defenses. And I think if you come into the game like the Leafs did yesterday and underestimate what they bring to the table, I think you're going to be in trouble. I still the Leafs could have won that game just as easily as they lost it. And I think that you're going to probably see a lot of games like that with the Montreal Canadiens, that, when the Canadiens win, you go, well, hey, they won. They got some goaltending. They got a timely goal. And that helps them push them over the edge. I don't foresee this team going out and being able to contend in any way, shape, or form in this division. But what is ultimately the goal for this season? Well, it's to get Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield going, and to see what you have in Kirby Dach and Jake Evans and this defense that's just getting thrown to the wolves. And I think that after this season, when they still have a top 10 pick in the draft, and that is going to be a great pick because there are tons of great players in the upcoming draft, and then you can decide what to do with some of your free agents. You've got Jonathan Drouin and Evgeny Dadonov, who are UFAs, as well as Sean Monahan. So you've got to think that they can weaponize that, come up with some more draft picks. They already have 2 firsts, a second, a third, 3 fourths, 2 fifths, and they're 6th and 7th. So you can expect that they will end up with some more draft picks. I mean, who wouldn't want Sean Monahan as their third line center at $3.15 million. If you can fit him under the cap, what a great pickup, especially if he continues to turn his career around here in his late 20s. Justin, did you find that answer? Did you figure out what the deal is?
No, haven't yet. I've been looking.
Okay, that's okay. Know. Well, we'll figure it out later, and we'll talk about it on part 2. Now you have to listen to part 2 of the Atlantic Division, otherwise you'll never know. What do you have any other final thoughts about this Montreal team? Anybody that you maybe look at and go, oh, nobody's expecting much out of said player, and you do.
Yeah, I think if anybody really, I'm looking at Kirby Dach. I think this is a guy that was kind of cast off from Chicago, said you're 21, but you're not part of our rebuild, which is just crazy for a center of his size and skill level. So, I'd like to see what he can contribute now. He's going to get an opportunity to play some top 6 minutes. Last night he was with Monahan and Hoffman on that second line. So, we know Nick Suzuki's the number 1 center, but man, it'll be nice to see him get some minutes, and we'll see how he produces.
Yeah, and signed at 3.3 for the next 4 seasons. I mean,
which could be a big steal.
Yeah, right? If all goes well. I mean, he only had 26 points last season, 9 goals, and that was on a bad Chicago team. A lot of crap was happening. He just couldn't find a fit there, and you wonder, maybe he can put up 35, 40 points. That each year, that 3.3 looks wonderful. And you wouldn't complain about it. Okay, well, that's the Montreal Canadiens. It's time to give our basement and our floor and our ceiling for this team. And if you haven't listened to the previous previews, I would suggest you go listen to those because they're fantastic. We know what we're talking about here. And our ceiling, obviously the heights of what this team we think they can accomplish, and their floor. We're not going to hell with them, not to the basement, just to the floor, where we think, assuming a healthy season, where they may end up at if things don't go well. Where do you have the Montreal Canadiens, Justin?
Yeah, as far as ceiling is concerned, I think maybe 7th in this division is as high as I can see them going. Obviously, we talked about a lot of teams towards the bottom of this division last year that got better, Detroit, Ottawa, right? So do I think Montreal improved enough to get past those teams? Again, there was nearly a 20-point difference between them and Detroit. So, no, I don't think they've improved enough, but I do think there's enough there to say, hey, they're going to definitely win some more games, right?
Sure.
They're definitely not going to have a negative 98 goal differential. So, to me, I think they could potentially hop one team. Maybe it's a Buffalo. Maybe Ottawa doesn't really improve as much as we hope. And, DJ Smith gets fired. Who knows?
Do we hope that Buffalo improves? Because, see, I don't know about you, but I don't really want Buffalo to improve because that probably means they're going to beat the Leafs more than they'd already do. The Buffalo Sabres are Leaf killers.
Either, but we'll talk about them.
And when you look at last season's standings, Montreal's way behind at 55 points. Then you have Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa at 75, 74, 73 points. So those 3 teams, when theoretically, very much the same season as far as their production and their win rate. So you have to think, well, Montreal's going to probably be able to win anywhere from an extra 6 to 10 games, which would put them right in the low 70s, we'll say. And that would probably mean that other teams are losing games, so it's all going to balance itself out. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's pretty simple with this team. It's either last or 7th, but they're not going and beating out Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo, all 3 of those teams.
No, absolutely not. No, maybe hop one, and like I said, Buffalo to me is the prime candidate if we're talking any one of those 3 teams to really fall, right? I think Ottawa and Detroit did much more to improve their teams. So, to me, I think maybe getting past Buffalo. Now, as far as a floor is concerned, I would probably say 3rd worst in this league here, behind maybe a team like Arizona and Chicago, probably going to finish worse than them. But, whether or not they, can get past a team like Seattle, Anaheim, or, maybe Buffalo there.
Right.
As far as the floor is concerned, there's going to be some ups and downs with this team this season. So we'll see.
There also is, obviously, because they won the draft lottery, that's if we're right and they can't win it again, then there would be that, like, well, like they don't maybe have the same kind of incentive to just completely bottom out, trade everyone. I think it's pretty clear Jonathan Drouin is going to get dealt at some point this season. I have to imagine that he's going to get dealt. Like, eat half his salary, let him go somewhere else, grab a third-round pick for the guy, and let's wash our hands of this relationship because it has been a disaster. Man, can you imagine the Montreal Canadiens if when they made that deal, if they just hadn't, and they would have Mikhail Sergachev? Whoops. Maybe Tampa Bay doesn't win the Stanley Cup, honestly.
Maybe Tampa Bay trades back and gets Drouin back in the fold because they're always looking for that middle six guy to come in at the deadline.
Nice. All right, well, there's the Montreal Canadiens. Good luck to the Habs, already on their way to a perfect season. So let's move on to speaking of which, it's a good transition. Let's move on to the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Tampa Bay Lightning obviously represented the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup Finals last year. They went out and signed several of their boys to upcoming deals. Sergachev signed an 8-year deal, $8.5 million. Chernak signed a big deal, $5.2 million a season. And who else signed a big deal? Somebody else did. Nicholas Paul re-signed with them. So the only guy they're really unable to bring back is Palat. Palat goes to the New Jersey Devils. And we sort of have similar looking Tampa Bay Lightning to last year, really minus Palat, right? Am I missing anyone else that they lost?
Ryan McDonough.
Shit. Yeah. No, see, he's irrelevant. He's not even good. That's why I forgot about him. That's why I forgot about him. No. So, Ryan McDonough. That's my bad there. But they do bring back Vladislav Nemesnikov, who had a nice little season with the Red Wings last year and kind of slot in with Tampa Bay's in their bottom six, maybe get some power play time. But a full season of Nicholas Paul, a full season of oh my gosh, why can't I think of Brandon Hagel, who they acquired from the Blackhawks. I mean, I think that they may be, even with the players that they lost, I don't see much of a step backwards for this team. Do you?
Yeah, I will say, so they did get Philippe Myers in that McDonough trade, right? So for me, the bigger concern was I'm not really too worried about this forward group being able to produce offensively because we know what they've got. And as long as you have Kucherov, Point, Stamkos up there, you're going to score a lot of goals. Right?
Sorelli, that's who else they signed. I was like, There's someone else that signed, and I cannot think right now.
There you go. Yeah. And so, with those guys still in the fold, I don't worry much. You've got Vasilevsky, so they're going to keep the puck out of the net. But with McDonough, right, he's gone. That's where I'm concerned a little bit. Obviously, Philippe Myers comes in. He was supposedly supposed to be a top 4 guy in Nashville. Wasn't really panning out the way they hoped, so they ship him off in the trade. So at least Tampa Bay gets back a decent top 6 defender. And now you give Sergachev a little bit more ice time, and now you're putting more of a responsible load on his shoulder, saying, hey, you know what? You're no longer our number 3, guy that fills in on the power play. You're our top 2 guy, right? You and Hedman, that's it. Go out there and do your thing. And so they paid him handsomely for it. Obviously, next year he's going to start making more money than Hedman. So clearly they think he's a part of their long-term solution. And, Hedman's only 31, so he'll be around for, plenty more years. But, man, to have Sergachev and Hedman around for a while now is going to look pretty good. So I think I have no doubt with Sergachev he's going to rise to the occasion. And, given all that, I don't see them slowing down too much. Obviously, McDonough, right, the block shots, the things he does that don't always, equate to goals, I think is really going to be missed a little bit. They're going to have to get a little bit more contribution from guys like Cal Foote and Eric Chernak as far as that department is concerned. So hopefully some other guys step up, and then maybe it kind of lessens the missing piece there.
Do we think that which Alex Killorn are we going to get? The 60-point, 25-goal Alex Killorn in the regular season, or are we going to get the 4 points, 4 assists in 23 games, can't score a goal over the entire playoffs? I guess I'm kind of wondering, like, do we see the complete decline of Alex Killorn in the playoffs? Can he still be effective for the Lightning? I mean, he is now 33 years old. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that, sometimes these guys, once you're past 30, there just comes a day where you hit a wall and you don't perform the way you used to. Are we there with him?
I don't think we're there quite yet, right? I do think while Killorn couldn't put up any goals, he did get 4 assists in the playoffs. He was still doing
in 23
other
games.
Right? No, absolutely. It's so weird, right? It's an anomaly, and but again, watching him in the playoffs, and from everything I read from other people who study Tampa Bay a lot more than I do, he was still doing all those other things that generated successful play on the ice that maybe didn't necessarily translate to goals or assist points on the score sheet. And so, one of the reasons, though, I do think you're going to see a regression as far as contribution, in terms of goals and assists, is because, last year he played a lot of time with Steven Stamkos and Braden Point. And I don't think you're going to see much of that this year. He's probably, right now, they've got him slotted on the second line with Nick Paul and Brandon Hagel. And obviously those guys don't produce offensively like your Stammers and your Braden Points do. So, depending on where he sits, all season long, if he's just on that second line and you keep those top 3 guys together, it's going to be hard for him to produce, right? And maybe once Cirelli comes back, that adds a little bit of a boost. But, because I know those 2 guys were so good defensively for this team in the playoffs, and part of the reason they went to the finals. But, I think it's going to be hard for him to repeat that kind of, output as far as, getting another 60-point season.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Yeah, there's a little bit, I think, because of these younger players coming up, I think it makes more sense to use Alex Killorn in more of a, I guess in some respects, you're using him the way you use Palat, right? Like, he maybe isn't as good defensively as Palat, but he's responsible defensively. 60% of his, I was just went and looked at some playoff stats for him. 60% of his faceoffs were in the defensive zone in the playoffs. So, I mean, certainly that's whereas in the regular season, he was at 45% in the defensive zone. So he bumped up a 30% bump in faceoffs in the defensive zone in the playoffs, which can certainly have a big impact on whether or not you're going to produce offensively. You're taking tons of draws in the defensive zone. Also in the regular season, his PDO was ridiculous, 102.1, whereas in the playoffs, it really came back down to normal at 98.8. So, I mean, that'll affect your production. The shooting percentage is down, and you're taking more faceoffs in the defensive zone. So there are reasons to kind of explain what happened to him. I guess everyone is. You're always going to wonder. These once you start getting in these championship teams, they've been there 3 times in a row. Like, are they going to be tired? There is that discussion. I know it's maybe a little less than maybe it was 20 years ago. Players are just in such great shape, but you do wonder, does this team kind of have that season where it's like the Pittsburgh Penguins did? You won a couple and things went really well, and you go and you lose in the first round to some upstart team. That's not really, that's the playoffs. We're not really talking playoffs, but I guess it's hard not to look ahead for the Lightning because the regular season, my guess is they're going to go on cruise control and end up second or third in the division, right? Like, do what they always do. Anyone that you expect to overperform for this team?
Ooh, overperform. I think if anybody's due for maybe a nice little bounce back, I look at Vlad Lemestikov. You talked about him earlier. I think he's got an opportunity to slide in this middle 6 up and down the lineup a little bit.
He's playing on the first line. For a little bit. Yeah, he's getting his shot with Stamkos and Kucherov, which would be a total resurgence for his career.
Yeah, and I mean, depending on when Cirelli returns, right, you're going to see him kind of fluctuate between those top 3 lines. But again, I think, given that they lost Palat and Nemestikov does bring, he brings that quickness, he brings the good hands. He's got a good hockey IQ. I mean, Hell, he's related to Igor Larionov, so the apple can't fall that far from the tree as far as IQ is concerned. So, the guy does everything pretty good. So, given that, I think, the opportunity he's given to play with guys like Kucherov and Stamkos, he could bounce back and really be, up for a 30, 35-point season at least.
Yeah, I know this isn't maybe what people expect when you say, who's going to surprise us this year? I wonder if it's not Vasilevsky. I wonder if he doesn't return to the he wins the Vezina. I wonder after a year of everyone pumping Shesterkin up, which ironically Shesterkin did beat Vasilevsky in game 1 of the regular season this year, but I wonder if ultimately Vasilevsky has that kind of season because maybe the Lightning took some steps back with some of their rosters up front and losing McDonough. I wonder if he just kind of goes and he's above a .920 save percentage once again. Last year he dropped to a .916, but he was .925 the year before. He was .917 the year before that, .925 the year before. So, you see that little pattern. He's going to be in the 920s this year. He's got to be. So, and that's where
let me ask you. Brian Elliott looked pretty good last year in the backup role for this team, and so Vasilevsky, does he need to play 63 games again? Is he going to be above or below that 60-game mark?
Can I see Brian Elliott playing more than 20 games? No, I can't. But he looked good last year. 912 save percentage. I think it shows you how good the Lightning were and are. I don't see Vasilevsky playing fewer than 60 games.
Okay.
At $9.5 million, I think if you're smart, you can play 60 games and you can play a very balanced first half of the season and then go, oh no, we need to win a lot. And you can totally overplay guys down the stretch. That's exactly what happened in Nashville last year. Nashville was playing a relatively balanced, obviously Saros is their starter, but down the stretch, Saros was playing every game. Every game outside
I will say their backup
so,
Rittich was just terrible last year. So.
He was terrible, and they would not have made the playoffs if he hadn't played. So I get it. But with the Lightning, I don't think you're going to be in that situation. So I don't necessarily think that it's as much to do with we want him to only play 55 games or whatever. I think it's about how many games you play in the final 2 months of the regular season. I think you can probably play a guy a little more earlier and then start to rest them and as needed down the stretch if you're already in a playoff spot, which everyone was in a playoff spot last year. Nobody was going to lose their spot come what? Thanksgiving? Christmas?
Right.
So I think that as long as you manage him down the stretch, you're fine. I'm okay with seeing him play another 63, 65 games as long as he's not playing all the time towards the end, and they're leaning on Brian Elliott a little more towards the end of the season. So that's where I'd land.
Fair.
Okay, well let's do our last team here, the Buffalo Sabres.
Real quick, we need to.
We need our floor
and ceiling.
Yep, we do indeed. Ceiling, Stanley Cup again. How can you not have this team's ceiling be going to the Stanley Cup Finals? I don't know if they'll win it, but they certainly could go to the Stanley Cup Finals again. And then my floor is probably finishing somewhere in the that 3 slot in the division, and they could be a wild card, but I don't think they're in any danger of missing the playoffs. I think that if they're a wild card, it's just because once again the bottom feeders in this division don't win at all, and everyone just has boatloads of points, and they end up as a wild card team, which it doesn't really matter to them, I don't think. So I think it's making the playoffs and 7 games, and they happen to lose this time instead of winning. That would be my floor.
Okay. Yeah. I don't disagree. I think Stanley Cup Finals for sure is the ceiling. And as far as, the floor is concerned, I think, that number 4 spot in this division, right? I think they're going to put it on cruise control most of the year and just kind of skate into the playoffs and then turn it on like they normally do.
Yeah, no one would be like this year. last season, if the Lightning had lost to the Leafs in that Game 7, everyone would have just gone, well, they won 2 in a row. They were exhausted.
Right.
And you know what? If they happen to lose in the first round this year, it'll be the same thing. Well, they were there 3 times in a row. It's okay. They can take a summer off. It's fine. I'm sure that's not what they'd be thinking, but there's a pretty big built-in excuse for them not to win this year. Not to not make the playoffs, but not to win a round, although they probably will. Okay, let's go to the Buffalo Sabres to close out the show. Let's just start it out by talking about what goaltending tandem in the National Hockey League is worse than the Buffalo Sabres. Ready, go.
Oh, boy.
Do we like Arizona's goaltending tandem better than Buffalo's?
Ooh, oh, man.
Do we like Vejmelka and Connor Ingram, who played great in the playoffs, by the way? Connor Ingram. Now, and when we did our Central preview, we did not include Connor Ingram. We didn't talk about him because they just scooped him up on waivers. So,
yeah, honestly,
big mistake on our part.
Really, I think the only tandem I might put below this one with the Sabres is the Chicago Blackhawks with Peter Mrazek and Alex Stalock. I
thought you were a Stalock guy. You love that guy.
No, I used to be a Mrazek guy. I mean, he was great in Detroit, but you know what? I think Mrazek just can't stay healthy. And, when he doesn't play for a decent team, right, he just – like when he was in Carolina, right, he was protected by the systems around him. And when he had to go to other teams like Toronto, when Detroit started to get really bad there, his true colors started to show a little bit more. And with all the injuries, he just hasn't been the same since. So I don't have a lot of confidence in his ability to bounce back unless he stays healthy. Then we might see something close to, a 900, 905 goaltender, which would be great for Chicago. But Stalock, on the other hand, hasn't been a full-time NHL goalie since 2020. And in 12 games with, San Jose's AHL team, the Barracudas, he posted an .872 save percentage.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I mean, the Blackhawks already, they dropped game 1 5-2 to the Avs. So, yeah, they're bad.
So it's going to be hard to watch.
I think I'll say this about the Buffalo Sabres goaltending. I think both, especially Craig Anderson, but also Eric Comrie to a certain extent, I think they're just both guys that you can easily root for. Like, you want to see good things happen to these guys. They bounce around. Eric Comrie is what? In Winnipeg last year, in 19 games, he posted a .920 save percentage. His other stop, even he only played 1 game in New Jersey. But, his last 19 games, looking pretty decent.
Well, here's the thing about Comrie, though. He's got something to prove. He's got an opportunity because he's won it. He's been looking for that starter's job, right? And you thought maybe, again, with Winnipeg, you knew he wasn't going to take that away from Hellebuyck.
Sure.
But, now he comes out and says, I can be a number 1B goaltender. And, they've got him for 2 years at 1.8. So clearly they think he can hang around. But
no, yeah, if he can post even a 905 save percentage, the Buffalo Sabres are a better team than they were last year.
And I think both these goaltenders can do that. I don't think that's out of the realm. It's just whether or not their forward group can score enough goals to, like they did last year. So
yeah. All right, well, let's transition over to the forward group. Players really they didn't really bring in anyone new in terms of guys that are going to just punch the line forward. They named Kyle Okposo their captain, but a lot still looks the same other than signing Tage Thompson to a massive deal. $7.14285, $7 million a year for the next 8, or maybe no, that one was a 7-year deal, right?
Yeah, 7 years, ends 29-30. So yeah,
right. And then they also re-sign Matthias Samuelsson, which forgive yourself if you don't even know who Matthias Samuelsson is, because when I first saw the name and getting this $4.2 million extension, I said, "Excuse me, who is this person?" So yeah, the Sabres giving out extensions like they're a winner, but they're walking in with the same forward group as last year. I don't really. I mean, this team obviously isn't ready to take a big, huge step. They barely scored more goals than the Wings and the Senators last year, and even the Montreal Canadiens at 232. Where do you think this team do you think this team can score more than they did last year?
Boy, that's a loaded question, right? I think it all really rests on, the younger kids, right? I mean, look, we know that Jeff Skinner's there, and maybe he continues to have some semblance of his old self, right? Maybe puts up 60, 70 points like he did last year and scoring 33 goals. But really it all rests on these younger guys. And when I say younger guys, I'm talking about the Peyton Krebs, the Jack Quinns of this team, because those are the guys that are going to be expected to carry this team into the future, right? I mean, Jack Quinn only played 2 games, 2 points last year. So can he do it in a full NHL season? He's certainly going to get the opportunity. I mean, right now you've got Jack Quinn slotted on that second line, outside, Middlestat and Alex Tuck. So
who looks great. Alex Tuck is,
yeah.
I mean, he I think has shown going to Buffalo how a player who, like, he's not a superstar. He's good. He's a good top 6 forward, not a superstar, but he's a superstar in Buffalo. Like, it just shows you how important it can be when a guy's a hometown guy playing for their city. It's just a different vibe. It's sort of like college football. Like, there's just something different about a guy who, he played high school ball here. He's a guy from our state, from our area, and he just gets it. They get what the team, what the area is all about, and they just fit in so well. That's him. He's just that. He's the perfect fit for the Buffalo Sabres. And the Sabres are the perfect fit for him.
I was actually surprised he didn't get named the captain, because Okposo's gone after this year, and he signed for 4 more years. So you figure, okay, if we've got a captain here, let's make sure he's going to be around for at least a couple seasons, right?
And you know what? He may be. He's only 26. And Okposo's been there for a long time, right? Signed there out of the Islanders. And I wonder if, because this season's going to be likely another rough season, it's probably not going to be as bad as last year, but probably pretty similar in terms of point total, like at the end of the day. And maybe it's more, all right, Kyle, you're the veteran on this team. He's the oldest player on the team outside of Craig Anderson. So, take care of these kids this year. And yeah, Okposo might be gone after this year. I can't imagine that he's dying to stay, but or maybe he signs a 1 year, $1 million kind of thing after this deal. But and maybe that's Alex Tuck becomes the next captain. When he's a little bit older and has had time to be in Buffalo outside. He was traded halfway through the year last year, so give him a little more time in Buffalo just to acclimate himself to everything, and then hand him the C when he's ready.
I mean, Nick Suzuki, man, stepped right in, and they gave it right to him. They didn't even give him that much time to acclimate himself. So
that's true. But that's they don't really have anyone.
Well, I'll give you that. Right,
he's
going to be a superstar, right?
They obviously gave him that captaincy as a you're going to be our guy forever, for a long time. You're a Montreal Canadian. Don't leave. Okay. Well, defensively speaking, where do you think who finishes with a better year, Owen Power or Rasmus Dahlin?
Boy, I mean, listen, if Buffalo is right about the extension they handed out to Samuelson, right, they expect Dahlin to have the better year, because ideally, right, they expect Samuelson to be that defensive blanket, that guy, the perfect partner for Dahlin, who can allow him to, pinch, can allow him to jump up in the play, and he's going to be that rock defensively for him, right? I mean, it's kind of like goes back to Nicholas Cronwell and Brad Stewart, or I always think about Stewart was just that rock on defense, maybe gave you 20 points a year, but allowed Nicholas Cronwell to do his thing and put up 50 points a season. So,
and blow people apart.
Right.
End people's lives.
Yeah, exactly. Ask Martin Havlat about that. Owen Power, though, I think, again, he's a young kid. I think in the long term, I think he's going to be a much better player than Rasmus Dahlin, if you ask me. But, again, he's 3 years younger. He's still got time to grow. And I think, he's going to be sitting on that second line. So Dahlin's going to be expected to be the guy. and Powers is going to have the opportunity to just kind of grow into it. And so I think they'll ease him into it. And if, maybe it's not working out, they'll send him down.
Yeah, I don't think they're sending him down anywhere.
I don't think so either, but
I will say this. I think that when all is said and done, I think that Owen Power has more 5-on-5 points than Rasmus Dahlin. I can't say that he's going to have more points than him total, because Dahlin he's going to get that number one power play time. Dahlin scored
21 points on the power play last year. That was more than any other Sabre.
Right. So 21 points. He had 3 goals in the power play. So, those 21 points, without that, you're sitting at a 32-point season. Do I think that Owen Power can put up 32 points 5-on-5? Yes. Yes, I do. So I think that, man, it's going to be a fun defense to watch, because there are still high expectations for Dahlin. I don't think anyone thinks that he's done growing, becoming a better player. He had 53 points last year.
No, I think offensively, I'm not worried about it, but it's the defensive end of the game, right? That I think he needs to just improve slightly on.
And speaking of just other defensemen on this blue line, love the Ilya Lyubushkin signing. They obviously overpaid him to get him to come there at $2.75 million for a bottom pairing defenseman is a lot, but the Buffalo Sabres have the cap space. They still have $18 million in cap space, mostly because they're only spending $3.3 million on their goaltending alone. And defensively, they only have one defenseman making over $2.75 million. So it is funny to see Lyubushkin as their second highest paid defenseman. But I like his game. I like what he brings. He's gonna blow some guys up. Kind of your light Cronwall kind of player. He's responsible. He's not gonna score or put up big points by any means, but he can be someone who can kill penalties and cause some players to look over their shoulder, which is an underrated aspect of a good defender. If guys are afraid to come down the side walls on you, then they're going to be a little scared to cut towards the middle too. That's.
Well, and you think about it too, right? So you got Lyubushkin on that third line, who's destroyer of souls. And on that second line, you've got Owen Power, who's 6'6", just a beast too. So if he learns to use his body, Buffalo could really inflict a lot of pain.
It's too bad that the Sabres couldn't convince Chara to come there for a year. Teach Owen Power how to be an absolute monster and how to use the long reach. Okay, well, let's go ceiling and floor for this team.
Okay, well, I'll jump right in. I think as far as the ceiling is concerned, I think this team could potentially push for a wild card spot in this Eastern Conference. I think last year we kind of saw it, right? It would take 100 points to get in. I think that maybe there's going to be a lot more less disparity between the top and the bottom.
It's probably more like 96 in a normal year, right? Like 96 is typical. There was a lot of bad teams in this division, and a lot of teams were just like, screw it, not spending money, goodbye everybody that makes money.
Right. Yeah, and I do think, if Buffalo gets decent seasons out of the younger kids, Jack Quinn, Peyton Krebs, these guys take those next steps, right? Tage Thompson continues to be their number one guy there at center. And they get decent goaltending out of Eric Comrie and Anderson, which I think is more than possible. This team could really potentially be fighting for a wild card spot. Now, I don't see them as a playoff team, right? I think that's out of the question this early in the stage of this rebuild. But, hey, you never know, right? And as far as the floor is concerned, I think this team could potentially finish at the bottom of this division. Now, they're not going to be Chicago or Arizona bad to bottom of this division, but I think the other teams around them got a little bit better, and Buffalo really didn't do much other than having a full season of Owen Power to get maybe better as far as adding pieces. So Detroit and Ottawa are probably going to hop them. They're going to be battling with Montreal maybe towards that bottom of the division if things go bad, and they could potentially bottom out.
Yeah, if guys take a step and and things go well for them, yeah, you're definitely looking at a potential battle for a wild card spot. Don't think they'll get in either, but fifth in the division is my ceiling. My floor, I think they're a little better than last in the division, but last in the division last year was 55 points. That's not really like they're not going to end up with fewer than 70 points, which like really would be a very similar season to what they experienced last year. And I could see teams finishing ahead of them just because things will be more even. But yeah, I don't see them finishing dead last in the division unless we start going through goaltenders. It's feasible to think that Craig Anderson could be, maybe he only can play a small amount of games. He played 31 last year. At 41, that might be a stretch. So, are you bringing Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen up? Are you playing Malcolm Subban more? And none of those things, well, especially Malcolm Subban coming up and playing, those just aren't good for winning.
No, and so here's the thing too, right? Buffalo, maybe say they have 5 less losses than they did last year, and Montreal gets 5 more. They're both tied for last place. So
yeah,
it's not that far of a stretch to think that, in my opinion, Buffalo could potentially find themselves at the bottom.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair. But if they do find themselves at the bottom, I still think they're probably like 6th last. I think that there's a lot of really bad teams that will be worse. Like I think that Philadelphia will be worse. I think Arizona, Chicago, I think Seattle, Anaheim, and San Jose all have the potential to be worse than the Sabres. But yeah, we'll see. All right. Well, there's the first part of the Atlantic Division. We will be doing the Boston Bruins. What other teams are in the Florida Panthers and the Ottawa Senators on part 2, and then stay tuned for the Leafs and the Red Wings as we close out the Atlantic Division and the NHL for our previews. We know the season started. We don't care. We're just going to keep doing previews. So, yeah, Justin, hope you have a great night. And to our listeners, thanks for listening. Find us on at OT Hockey Talk on Twitter. Justin, any final thoughts?
I love you.
Love you too. Bye.